In this week's One Big Thing in Livestock Markets, we're going to take a look at capacity utilization in the cattle feeding sector. So one of the things that's gone on over the last few years is obviously, I think most of us know, cattle numbers have declined to a multi-decade low. In some cases, whether we're talking beef cows or total cattle inventory, the fewest number or smallest number in 50 or 60 years. Well, one of the things that has happened is we have a capacity for cattle feeding. We have feedlots that are already built and developed and feed cattle, yet those that are in place and in business start having to deal with fewer and fewer feeder cattle to buy. And so what happens is, or what has happened is that as those available supplies got smaller, those feedlots had to compete against each other or bid higher prices to get those cattle in their feedlots. So this is a common thing that happens across a lot of industries where you get an overcapacity problem. And in fact, we'll talk about this in a later date, some of the same issues on the meat packing side. And so what we've done is we've had to go through this process of wringing out some feedlot capacity out of the industry as feeders bid higher and higher prices for feeder cattle and became unprofitable, and those lack of profits or losses take their toll, and finally people exit the industry. So we've had a bunch of that's going on. So the effect on the calf market or feeder market has been those feedlots have competed or bid up the price of feeder cattle, and then eventually, as some of those feedlots exit, those prices start coming down. So a portion of our record high calf prices and feeder prices in the last couple of years have been due to this overcapacity. So it turns out that every February in USDA's Cattle on Feed report, they publish an estimate of the number of, or the amount of feedlot capacity in feedlots with over 1,000 head capacity. So that came out a couple of weeks ago in the February Cattle on Feed report. So as we look at that, the feedlot capacity, if we look over since 1999, we saw really a steady increase in feedlot capacity in these larger feedlots, really over that 15-year period, and then we hit a peak of over 17 million head capacity in 2012-2013 time period, and then it started to decline. And so the report that came out in February indicated a capacity of about 16.9 million head. So some decline in capacity really is related to this overall market situation of fewer cattle or tighter supplies. So one of the things we want to do is take a look at that, how we utilize that capacity. So if one way to look at it is to take the capacity and take a look at the number of cattle on feed, and in this case I've used January 1 cattle on feed divided by that capacity number, and you see that over the last 15-16 years we've had some broad swings in the percent of our capacity that was being used in kind of that one-time use, if you will. So capacity this capacity utilization rate changes with the number of head on feed, the number of our cattle inventory in total, and also some timing issues of when cattle are placed on feed. But this takes one look at it, and you can see by 2014, in that 16-year period we're looking at, by 2014 you see a capacity utilization of about 62%, and just very little increase since then. So certainly it highlights a declining capacity utilization, and, if you will, spreading those costs over fewer head, which makes costs even higher across the industry as a whole. You know, another way to look at it might be kind of the idea of a turnover rate or a flow through the system, in that cattle come in and cattle go out, and you don't just use the facility for that one head or that one turn of cattle. So if we look at it this way in terms of the number of fed cattle that are marketed each year, as a proportion of what that capacity is, then you see a steady decline over this same period. And that's really related to several factors. One is obviously the drought forced fewer cattle, a smaller inventory, longer feeding periods, and part of that is if we're going to feed to heavier weights, we may very well feed for longer period of time, which reduces that utilization rate. Something like feeding more dairy calves for very long periods of time to get to their finished weight can also stretch this out or reduce this marketing rate. One of the things I'd point out is that is going forward as we look at increasing cattle numbers cyclically. More cows leads to more calves, lead to more feeder cattle, and more on feed. I think we can expect this utilization rate to pick up. With more available supplies for feedlots, I think that reduces some of the pressure, the upward pressure on feeder prices, because that we start to match the available supplies more to the capacity that we have, and it takes some of the pressure off, or acts to reduce feeder cattle prices. So I expect in 2016 we'll see that rate increase back up towards a 1.2 kind of measure. So in the future we'll see increasing capacity utilization in the sector as our cattle numbers increase.